Oh, happy Monday, everybody. Monday main event. No Barry, I'm sorry. But we got Andrea Workington in today. So hopefully. Oh, and we've also got Mr. Joseph here as well, Matthew. So today we're going to be doing a segment called Let's Make a Deal. And Matthew's just dealing with some technical difficulties. But today we're going to be doing Let's Make a Deal. So we're going to be going over a deal that is ongoing with Matthew, and we're going to try and determine if we can turn this into something. And one of the cool things about it is the fact that there is some seller financing terms, kind of some potential for seller financing terms. So that's why we brought Andrea on and myself to kind of look over this deal to see what's possible and whether we can turn it into something. So welcome, Andrea.
Thank you.
And do we have Matthew yet?
We can see him, but
we can't hear you. This is going to be interesting. Anyways, in the meantime, if you're joining in, let us know that you're here. And if you guys have any questions or any feedback or any thoughts on this, I mean, definitely type it in the comments. It's going to be a fun one. So, Matthew, your mic is not working.
Yeah.
Oh, we got you.
There
There we
we go.
go.
Hi, guys.
How you doing?
Doing great. Yourselves?
good.
I'm awesome.
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 Oh, yeah. Nice. One of those days, eh? That's fantastic.
Yes. So you got a deal that you're currently working on, I understand?
Yes,
And it's in Edmonton?
it is. Yes.
Okay. So do you want to maybe start off by maybe telling us a little bit more about it, how you found it, and how it's developed so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started going down this journey with watching a lot of YouTube videos, of course. A lot of the content initially was from the US. And then, of course, looking here into Edmonton, I realized that Barry seemed to be the name out there in the city. So that led me into finding out about the group. And through another group, I was referred to joining the Facebook group. So I started putting up bandit signs.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, yeah. So I have about 30 to 40 in that range out there. So I've had a few calls. I went on an appointment to view this the property in question here, and we had a chance to go through and get a better sense of the property, and then that's kind of how I started.
So how long have you been at this now?
Well, I've been working in property management for the last 5 years. So I currently my day job is a property manager right now. So just kind of seeing how things are on a day-to-day. I manage primarily townhomes right now. I started off as a rental agent. And I figured it made sense I own a property myself. So I'm figuring it made sense to pretty much try and build that portfolio, right? So
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, you bring a lot of value too for joint venture partners when you have that pre-existing property management background. So that's pretty cool. So you're investing in Edmonton. You're living in Edmonton.
Yes, that's correct.
Right on. That's awesome. So how's the calls been so far? Was this like the first person that called you, or have you gotten other ones?
No, I've been out on quite a few appointments. I'm up to about 6 now.
Yeah.
And it's been about a month and a half of the signs being out. So there's a map behind me here. I kind of target different areas, different neighborhoods, different to see how the call flow would adjust based on where I put the signs.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just kind of been modifying every weekend. I'll move to a different part of the city, see if things happen that way. So yeah.
For sure. And Scotty's asking here, and this is exactly what I was thinking too. I wonder if it was his bandit sign that ended up on Reddit.
No, it wasn't mine. I laughed when I saw it, but those weren't mine.
I've been meaning to call the number just to see if I know who it is. I mean, there's only so many wholesalers, right?
Right.
So this deal, you headed out, you talked to them. Well, why don't we start actually before we get into the details of it? There's a lot of people, I know I've seen in the comments, a lot of people here that are trying out wholesaling and they're having some troubles. How did that first initial call go when they called you? Like what was your script like, and what kind of things were you looking for and asking about?
Yeah, great question. I guess I lean more on the experience I had, pretty much fielding calls on a daily basis when it comes to finding rental property. I adjusted it, of course, a little bit differently. I got a better sense of, hey, why are you considering? Actually, before I even got into that, the details of the property first and foremost, right? You want to understand that. You want to understand, try and get a little bit of a better sense of why they're choosing to potentially want to sell. You also are trying to figure out, well, how do I? Yeah, it's kind of tricky. I have a template that I use. I guess that's the best way to go about it. It's almost like a lead sheet, if you want to call it that. Seller's name, property address, email, details about the property, property condition. I asked them, well, if they were to sell the property, how much would they want to actually sell it for in its current condition? Have they spoken to a realtor? Have they chose to? Would they consider renting it out themselves? Just try and break down to I'm almost trying to find a reason to disqualify them, if that makes sense.
Makes all sense.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that they're actually motivated. If that, if I can gauge how motivated they are, then I would actually go in and actually have that conversation with them. Rather, I don't want to have to waste my time going in and I don't. There's no deal there, if that makes sense. But that's.
Andrea's nodding her head. I mean, she has more experience than anyone about this and trying to determine whether they're motivated, because, you really don't want to leave your desk and go to a house if they're not motivated, right?
Right. Yeah. So I'm trying to gauge that as best as I can.
That's awesome. So do you guys want to just hop right into like the details of this deal, or was there anything more you want to kind of preface before we pull up the slides?
No, I think it's what I'm trying to understand is more so I don't have a system, a methodology in terms of going out and getting something like this put together. So let's say I go in on a call. Okay, I have the conversation. I take the details down. My approach has been pretty much to create pretty much write out, hey, this is what my thoughts are about the property, and based on the details that we shared, based on what I'm seeing, sort of quote like my expert advice. So this is, and I share that with them. And then from that, based on how they respond, then we can figure out, well, where do we go from here if they respond favorably to the feedback that I've given them. So that's sort of what I've been doing, and I'm not sure if that's really the most effective way to do it. So I'm just trying to figure out, okay, do I show up with a contract like, hey, listen, all right, we're agreeing to this price, sign here, or what are we doing, right? So that's what I'm trying to figure out right now.
What are your thoughts, Andrea?
Yeah, so I think it's great because you're finding some motivated people, but if they say yes, you don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
Isn't that the worst thing ever?
And you know what? It's funny because this is a big barrier for a lot of people. Is they can find the deal, but they just don't know what to do after they find the deal. So totally cool. Yes, you need to figure out what the price is going to be. So typically what I do is I say to people when I come back with my feedback, I basically have a price point in mind that I'm willing to purchase the property for. And so whether I've done my own comparables or gotten comparables from a realtor or whoever, I see that if there's a fit or not. So typically the first time that I meet up with them, I ask them what they're thinking, and they've probably already told me if I'm there in person. So if we're far apart in price, then it's about finding out what their plan B is. So let me give you a scenario that I came across this week, just to give you an example. So I went to see a house in Red Deer, and the guy sounded very motivated. He'd had it listed for 6 months, hadn't sold it because he smoked in it for 30 years. And most first-time home buyers, because this is, $250 price range, most first-time home buyers are not willing to move into a smoked-in house. No. And it's way too much renovation. And he realizes that, and he understands that. He, however, does not have the money to renovate it. So he gave me his bottom line, which was 235, and I just bought almost the exact same house last month as his, one community over for 205. And I told him that, and he didn't like my price.
Not good news.
So yeah, so sometimes you have to be prepared for what the most you're willing to pay. Obviously, we want to get it for the least price that we can, but it's good to have a price range in mind. And sometimes people will tell you one thing on the phone, but when you get there and you understand their level of motivation, it's just asking key questions like, so you're telling me that if I don't pay you $235, you're not going to sell me your home?
It's a powerful question.
Yeah.
Or what will you do if your house doesn't sell? And if they say, well, I'll just keep it as a rental, it's like, okay, have you rented properties before? Do you understand what that process is? It's a bit of a hassle, or, what's their worst case scenario? So it's good to know, to ask those questions. Is that the best they can do? And, obviously when you're going through the house, you don't want to look too excited.
Right.
And it's good to understand, what kind of renovations need to be done. And whenever I talk about renovation numbers with people, I'm talking retail pricing, because it's not me swinging the hammer, right?
Right.
And even if it was me swinging the hammer, I'm still giving retail prices.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's all these things that prevent people from moving forward. A, they don't have money to renovate, or B, they're so stuck on their price. So it's really good to know, is it about the price or is it about terms? So when we're doing seller financing deals, either we get them the price that they want and they have to give us a longer time period if it's a price that's not really in line with what we want to pay. So in this case, let's say on my same example, he wants 235. So if he was to do seller financing for me for 5 years, then I might be willing to pay 235, because I'm going to have a bunch of principal pay down during that time that will offset it.
Right.
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 So if that's what the price is, then I can work with that as long as I get the time that I need. Okay. Now, if it's about terms, like I need out in the next 30 days, it's not so much about the price. It's about, I'm in trouble. I have no way to get out. I can't make my next mortgage payment. Just give me enough money so I can move and I'll be gone. So those are typically situations where people owe closer to what it's worth. They don't have a lot of equity in their property. So if you can offer them a quick solution to get out of this hole they've dug themselves in, and most people, of course, wait till they're 4 or 5 months behind, not about to be behind. So when it comes to seller financing, it's either about getting them the price because they're so stuck on the price, or it's about getting them out quickly. So that's what you kind of need to know from this person. Is it about, because they won't always say, and sometimes you have to ask like really clear questions, like, are you behind on your mortgage?
Right. Right.
And so I was at an appointment a few weeks ago where we finally got to that question, because I was like, I couldn't figure out why she was like, on one hand, so casual, and in the other hand, well, it needs to go this week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hold on a second. Are you, and I just asked her and she goes, well, yes, I am. And I'm like, okay, you're only 2 payments behind, but you're feeling the pressure as if you need that check signed today.
Right.
But she wanted cash in hand today to pay out this mortgage. And she's willing to drop her price $100,000.
Wow.
Really?
Just get out. And so you just don't know what those motivations are sometimes unless you ask these key questions. Because some people are cool as cucumbers and you're thinking, okay, well, how do these dots align? But anyhow, so that's just some general comments for you. It's really about asking, timelines can be very important. It can give you that clue as to the motivation level. If they tell you, oh, well, it could be 3 months, 6 months, then they're not necessarily as motivated. If they're saying, I need to be out in 30 days or less, then you know that, okay, there's something else going on here.
Mm-hmm. It's where was I going with that? It's when you're dealing with private sellers. I mean, in a lot of cases, they're putting up their guard because you're coming in and they think that you're just going to try and grind them down. So that they're not giving a whole lot of information. And Andrew, you had mentioned earlier, I can't remember what you said exactly. It was something along the lines of you don't want to walk in there and seem all excited about the house. So I'm kind of curious, Andrew, like how do you carry yourself, when you walk into a house with a private seller, whether it be AFS or wholesale? How are you dressing? How are you speaking? Are you being over empathetic? Are you being like stern and like not saying much? Like, how do you carry yourself in order to get the people to open up, to say the things that you want them to say?
So I just dress like an average person. I don't dress fancy. I don't drive a fancy car. So I'm usually in jeans and a nice shirt.
Yeah.
And
it's very valuable to know, because a lot of people think that they have to be suit and tie and they got to come in with their BMW in order to seem like the type of person that has cash in a briefcase to pay all cash, because that's what your sign said, right?
That's it.
I drive a BMW, so I
park that around the corner and walk.
Yes.
A few houses.
I have a lot of people asking me like what should I wear? Should I have nice clothes, or should I kind of, not dress so nice because I don't want to come across as, sleazy and fast and quick. But you're right. Just a nice pair of jeans and a nice shirt. And a lot of times, regardless of what vehicle I'm driving, whether it's my older Tiguan or it's my truck, a lot of times I'll park them around the corner regardless, because I don't want them to have their own interpretations of what they think I am. But park your BMW around the corner.
Yeah. Good call. Thanks, man. I'll keep that in mind for sure.
Yeah. And typically when I walk in the door, I always ask them to take me on a tour of the house first, so that they can explain what they've done or what needs to be done. And I like to ask them how long they've lived there, what they like about the neighborhood, all those kinds of things. So it's about building the rapport. So I get them to talk and I don't. I just ask questions, but I don't share a lot, right? Okay. And so it's about that helps you to build the rapport, find out the motivation, and see kind of where they're at. And so when you can use words like, well, in my experience, this is what I'm seeing in the market, they tend to think, oh, okay, this person's, educated themselves on the market. They have a feeling of, what's going on. And so I just try to put them at ease and put them at comfort. I don't want to come across like as a high pressure salesperson. Yeah. I just want to be a regular person. I'm here to listen. And quite often I will get them to tell me their story. And it doesn't take much, of just gentle questioning to say, well, how did you get to this place? So that's kind of what I do when I get to the house.
I kind of, when I'm walking in a house, it depends on the situation. If it's a situation where maybe it's a straight up wholesale deal where it's or a flip kind of situation where you're trying to get the right price, I tend to be a little more firm and quiet and serious. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I'm going in there with the intent of seller financing, agreement for sale or something like that, I'm way more empathetic. I'm more focused on getting to know them. It really depends on the type of deal and your intent. So for this particular deal, you put signs out. Is your intent only to do agreement for sales, or is it to do wholesaling in general, but you're kind of leaving the door open for seller financing?
Yeah, so initially it started with the concept of wholesale, but I realized that I want to be open to taking on the full process. So if I run into a fix and flip, I'm comfortable moving in that direction. If it's agreement for sale, I'm moving in that direction. If it's a potential RTO opportunity, I want to understand that so I can potentially move in that direction, right? So I'm trying to be available to at least be knowledgeable on most areas, so that if I have to, you pivot as you need to, right? So that's the idea.
For sure. I mean, if you find the right property, and I always say, like, if you find the right property and then the seller's being stuck on $20,000 or $10,000, they need this, extra $10,000 or $20,000. A lot of times you can add in terms, seller financing that, you can benefit from and it, in turn profit from, and give them the price that they want. So if you're planning on flipping it and they need that extra $10,000, well, okay, sure, I'm going to get you to carry financing for me for 12 months. That way, the cost of borrowing for you for that flip is significantly less. It's $6,500, and the seller gets what they want. So that's good. It's good that you're keeping the door open. You know what? I think it's about time we can kind of get into the details. I'm going to put up the slides, and then I'll get you to read them and kind of tell us the story of what's going on with the seller. Yeah. And if you have any questions along the way or any things you're kind of stuck on, just feel free to ask us, and we'll kind of talk through it. Sure. So here's the first slide, and they can still hear you.
Yeah. So you wanted me to walk through it, or you said you're going to walk through it? Right?
Yeah, for sure. You can walk through it. I mean, you know this deal better than anyone. So feel free to kind of explain what's going on with it, and what your initial analysis is of it.
So yeah, just in terms of the address in itself, location wise, it's in a rough part of town. Lots of social services and that in the area. So it was, as you pull up, you can kind of get a sense of the neighborhood. So that was a challenge on front end. Walking up to the house, looking at the roof, you can see sort of shingles already lifting from the top of the roof. But the property in itself is, compared to everything around it, is relatively new, because it was built in 2008. Mm-hmm. So 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom, half bathroom on the main level. And of course the full bathroom upstairs. So 1,130 square feet. As you walk into the property, it hasn't been maintained well. It definitely needs some work to get it. Like if you were to put it on the market, I don't think a realtor would walk in and want to list that property the way it is. Mm-hmm. So I anticipate some work would have to be put in there. I'm not sure. Do you guys normally take the information from Honest Door and use that as a reference point at all?
I think it's a really good resource. I really like it for all the different resources that are available with it. However, mm-hmm. I've learned that they interpret today's price. However, it doesn't always compare well with the actual comparables that are available right now. So it may say 265, but when your realtor goes and pulls comps, mm-hmm. they might pull a bunch of 240s, 250s. Honest Door is, I don't know how they calculate it, but if you don't have someone pulling comps from you, it's a really good resource just to kind of get a baseline understanding before you pull your own comps.
Yeah. And in terms of the comps, I haven't partnered with a realtor yet, so I don't have that as a resource. What I'm currently using is a website called I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. It's BODE. So it's a listing website for if you want to sell your home privately and whatnot. But they seem to have quite a bit of data for properties in and around the area. So the most recent sale, comparable sale for a duplex in that area was from a year and a half ago. Everything mm-hmm. else has been townhouses or detached, and that sold for 207. So it kind of, seeing that and realizing there wasn't much sales data to compare it to that's recent, also is sort of a bit concerning on my end when I'm doing the analysis.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously you floated the idea of an agreement for sale as well, and she was interested.
Yeah. So she paid $220 for the property, and she wants $230. It's the family, husband and wife, and they have 3 kids, young kids. And what I realized about the property as well is their kids can't really go outside and play. And I think so. Initially, when they bought the property, they were new to Canada, and they didn't really have much of a sense of where they were buying. So because of that, I think they made that decision, and this is what she shared with me. And then they sort of realized essentially where they were, but they had already made that decision. So now they're at a point where they're just looking to move, but they're saying, okay, it's not urgent because they're not behind on the mortgage or anything like that. All their payments are current and everything. So they're just trying to find a solution to potentially get them out of it, knowing that they need to, one, do the work in the property to get it to where it needs to be. And of course, they don't have the finances to do that at this point in time.
Okay. Have they expressed any motivation so far to sell?
It's when I had the appointment with them, it was about a week ago, and we haven't had much discussion back and forth, but they are eager in terms of waiting on my feedback to find a solution for them. She was very curious about the agreement for sale option when I told her that I could potentially get her what she's asking, but I have to just it's pretty much reach out to a few people that I know and try and get a better understanding of how that would be possible. But initially I talked to them about 190 in that range, just based on trying to follow a different formula.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they haven't said, I need to get rid of this right now, or any extreme motivations.
No, I don't think it's extreme at this point. I think it's more of it would be nice to get out of where they're at, but of course they own the property, so they're there, right? So I don't think it's a burning desire, but they're saying about 3 months or so is what they're looking at.
Okay, so far. They haven't listed with a realtor, but if the only thing that they've really expressed to you is that they want to get to 30.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like it's a money thing for them. They want to get the most possible money.
Yeah, I gather that. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to continue on with the remainder of the details?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, the mortgage balance, as mentioned, is 186. Her current mortgage rate is 1.98. She actually just renewed I think it was last year, and she renewed for a 5-year fixed. So yeah, she's paying about $1,220 right now, and that $1,220 includes the property tax amount. And for this particular unit, it does have a side entrance. The basement is unfinished. It's just being used as storage right now. It is a legal basement. I think you should be able to put a unit down there. But again, the question of the cost of doing something like that, that's a whole different issue, right?
Right. I mean, now you got to pull comparables for suited properties in Macaulay area that have, suited properties. It's a little bit different than obviously than a normal duplex.
Yeah.
And the prices are obviously a little bit different. And there's not many sales in Edmonton right now for duplexes with secondary suites. So you kind of not a whole lot to pull from, but
right. It's almost like guessing to a certain degree.
So
yeah,
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you ask them if they were planning to buy another house when they sell this one?
Yeah, I did. So what they're saying is their intention is not necessarily to buy right away. They just want to move away and sort of essentially, I gather, get out of the neighborhood. That's what I'm gathering. But
have they mentioned anything about the neighborhood specifically?
Yeah, because part of the issue is that he did mention their kids can't really go outside, right?
That's what you meant.
Yeah, kids can't really go outside because their kids are younger, and yeah, just in terms of the crowd that's generally in the area, it's a little tricky for them, right?
Okay. Yeah. So the reason why I ask, and it's kind of important, especially if somebody's going to sign like a 4-year agreement for sale or 4.5-year agreement for sale, if they're wanting to purchase another home in the next 4.5 years and their financing is still tied up, or their room to finance is still tied up on this property, they're not going to be able to qualify unless they have excellent credit and really good income. So this is a really good clarifying question to ask people. And you need to make sure that they understand if they sign a seller financing document with you, it may prevent them from getting a mortgage for the next 4.5 years. So there's certainly a difference between kind of regrouping and renting for a bit to then figure out where you want to go.
Right.
But, especially dealing with seniors and new Canadians whose English is not a first language, we need to be very careful because they don't like a regular person who grew up in Canada typically doesn't know what seller financing is, never mind somebody whose English is second language.
Yeah.
So we want to be very clear with people what's in it for them to do seller financing, both the positives and the not as positives. And so if they have any intention of buying in the next 4.5 years and they can't because they signed a document with you, that's not going to serve them.
Right.
And so you need to keep that in mind, that that people need to be aware what they're signing, because otherwise, once they get to the lawyer's office and then the lawyer explains it to them, then that deal's done anyhow. So you may as well make sure up front that they know what the benefits are and what the offsets are of doing seller financing. And it's also a clarifying question I like to ask people on the phone, because if I know they need all of their equity out so that they can go purchase another property, they're not very likely to be a seller financing deal, because most people can't carry 2 mortgages. Some can. And so I always like to ask the question, so what happens if you don't sell? Are you going to still be able to move on to your next property? And if they say, oh, yes, I already talked to the mortgage broker, they said I could just keep it as a rental, then it's like, ding, ding, okay, here I am. But if they say, no, we have to sell and get all our money out so that we can then buy the next place, then I know it's just not a deal to be had.
Okay.
It's all about win-win. And in a lot of cases, sometimes when they're really desperate, if you have really good sales background and it's easiest to get them to sign on the line that is dotted and it's fast, it's quick. Don't worry, I'm going to take all this off your plate. We're going to make this seamless. And then, when they're in a situation like that, they're not thinking about the things that could possibly come up in the future. So, you really do have to go in there with a win-win mentality, and not so much with a sales, I need to get them to sign right now kind of thing.
Right.
Otherwise,
I prefer it that way. Not trying to, create any problem for anybody, and just, to serve myself. Not trying to do that. So,
for sure. Let's finish up with the last bit of details on the mortgage here. So you got the mortgage information from the seller. How did you get that? Did you just ask them to bring the mortgage statement with them, or?
Yeah, so because I was at their place, right? So it's pretty much we're at their house. So it's like, hey, listen, do you have the information? And she was okay with it. So I just asked for it.
Yeah. And she had it on hand, and she was no problem with revealing it?
No issues. She was pretty straightforward. Yeah, she was because I don't know. I just asked, and she went upstairs. She came back and she pulled out the papers. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Okay. So the balance is 186,000. She's looking for 230. So she's kind of expecting to not have to pay a realtor, and she's wanting about $44,000 back in her pocket at the end of it.
Yeah.
Mortgage rate's really good. She's locked into a 5-year fixed mortgage with about 4 years left on it.
Yeah.
So there is obviously some mortgage penalties if she was to sell it outside of seller financing. Mortgage payments with and property taxes is $1,220. That's not bad. That's actually, what's the market rent for this property just as is?
I would say, she could rent it. You could probably rent it for $1,300 where it's at. 13 plus. You probably could even. Part of the concern I have is who is it going to attract, and I got to be straight with you. Just based on where it's at, it's a little tricky, right? So it takes a real special person. So I would just say it's going to be on the market for probably a little bit longer than your traditional 30 days.
Is there a garage?
No garage in the back. They pretty much just pull up on the grass in the back. Yeah.
It's 3 bedrooms, I'm assuming.
3 bedrooms, yeah.
And is it a condominium? I didn't see that anywhere. I don't see condo fees.
No, it's just a duplex. Yeah,
just a duplex.
Half up on one side, right?
Yeah.
So
sure.
it sounds like, based on what you said, if the true market rent is 1,300 and mortgage taxes and insurance is probably more than 1,300 once you add insurance in, we're basically at a break even or negative cash flow if you were to add vacancy allowance and repairs and maintenance. So one thing you need to keep in mind is you can't change the location.
Right.
And so if you wouldn't normally buy in that location, just because it's a good deal doesn't mean you should buy it.
Okay.
You know, because if you think to yourself, well, you know, how hard is it to rent, the tenant profile? It's kind of like buying a place in a trailer park, right? You just have that lower expectation, more drama, more repairs, all these things, right? So, yeah, so those are just things to keep in mind. If you wouldn't normally buy in that area, then why are you looking to buy there now? So like, I applaud you for putting your signs up and trying different locations and seeing what makes a phone ring. But, you know, if you wouldn't normally buy them in Macaulay, then I wouldn't.
No,
bother.
So I'm curious, your thought process around, because for this particular property, right, there's a segment of the population that needs housing and treating it as that. Where you have someone potentially on a fixed income and they find a good place. And I mean, you may, or even like a shared or roommate type situation, like how do you process that information? Because yes, you can potentially make higher rents, but is it just you just prefer avoiding the headaches altogether? That's sort of the idea.
Well, so like you, I'm a property manager and I manage properties all across central Alberta, but I have some that are in the least favorable area of Red Deer. And they always take the longest to fill. And it's harder to get good working people who are willing to live a half a block from the soup kitchen with the constant traffic of a shopping cart. Now, we have found them, and then it's keeping them, right? Because you're tired of the riffraff of the neighborhood. So it's just that you have to, it's not that you can't make a go of it. It's just that you need to budget accordingly. So the fact that you're already basically principal, interest, taxes, and insurance a break even doesn't even make it a profitable venture to be. So on the other hand, let's say the market rent was 1,300 and your expenses were 800. Okay, different story, right? But it's about the math. It's the math that's important, and you have to take the emotion out of it. So yes, there's always good people on fixed income that you can find a place for, and some of those people stay for a long time. So we have somebody that's been 31 years in the same fourplex. Original with the building, but those don't come around very often, right? Yeah. So, you know, you just got to think about, it's got to be about the numbers. The cash flow is king, right? You don't want to be feeding this thing. And then if you're in an area that has a higher vacancy, then you need to account for that.
You account for that by making sure that there is enough room on the profit side. Is the mental okay? Gotcha.
So let's say if you were, so I'm not super knowledgeable about the Edmonton communities, but let's say it was something much nicer, and the vacancy in that neighborhood's 4%, but in Macaulay it's 10. Then you need to build a 10% vacancy allowance into your monthly rent rather than a 4%. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you might also want to budget a wee bit higher on the repairs and maintenance side.
And a security team. Lights.
That's you got me. Okay, good. Awesome.
And you know what? It's not an absolute no. It's your risk, right? It's your risk you get to determine whether you want to take that risk and if the reward is big enough, right? You may be able to manage that. Maybe you're like a super expert on Macaulay. Maybe you grew up in Macaulay. I have a joint venture partner, and he wanted me to buy an Alberta Ave, and he thinks Alberta Ave is the greatest neighborhood ever, and there's always going to be tenants there, and he loves it, absolutely loves it. So if you're from there, if you understand it, you're going to understand it a little more than someone who's not from there. So I mean, look at it. If you need to factor in more for vacancy and repairs and maintenance, factor it in, and then look at the big picture at the end of it. You know, if you got it for 9 years, how much money am I going to make, and where are you at in your investing career? I took less desirable deals when I started, just to get started and to get my feet wet and to get going. Whereas I won't touch them now, and it's entirely up to you. So you got to look at it and do a risk reward kind of thing.
Cool.
But you know, do you want to maybe look at this? Let's just throw out the neighborhood aspect of it right now, and let's just, you know, kind of look at what you know to determine whether you can actually turn this into a deal. So that way, when you make your decision on whether you're moving forward or just leaving, at least you know, okay, what am I dealing with here? So the first thing I'm thinking about, and the questions I was asking, was motivation. What are you leveraging to determine, you know, whether this could be turned into something with seller financing? So do you want to maybe summarize the motivations that she has?
Yeah. I think the motivation is being a parent. Being a parent and knowing that, I mean, your kids, they don't have as the freedom to just go outside and be, and always having to worry. So I think that as you know, the dad's there, mom's there, great. But it's like, I mean, even the backyard, I mean, the cars are parked on the grass. It's like you really, they have no space, right? So, and I think that was the primary thing that they're mentioning. So yeah, that's kind of the key motivation. I think everything else, I guess they're happy with their home itself, but yeah, just I think they're concerned about the safety of their kids more than anything.
Yeah, and being a female, you know, as well. I don't have any context that wasn't in the conversation or there, but you know, she may not feel all that comfortable being a woman when the husband is, you know, off at work or something like that. You know what I mean? In a dangerous neighborhood, it's a real thing. I'm not trying to be sexist. It's just a real thing, right? It's in a scary neighborhood when you got the kids and stuff like that. So,
yeah, because
now one other thing that maybe you haven't shined a light on yet, or is the mortgage penalties. Because if she wants to sell this traditionally, where title transfers, she's going to be hit with about 4 years worth of mortgage penalties, 4 years left on her mortgage term. So it's very likely going to be an interest rate differential calculation as opposed to 3 months interest. So the penalty, I mean, Andrea, what can we expect for a mortgage penalty on 4 years based on today's market interest rates?
It was a CIBC mortgage. I don't know if that helps or not, but yeah.
I'm not 100%.
No.
Yeah, if she's locked in, then it's an interest differential. Whereas if it's a variable kind of mortgage that's open, then it's just 3 months penalty. So, you know, I don't have the math calculator out, but you know, it could be like, you know, 1,500 or it could be 15,000. You know, it just depends because she's still got 4.5 years left.
When you say a differential, what differential between the rate that she's paying and
the rate that's being offered now? So what they do is when you lock in your mortgage and then you pay it out early, then you have to pay what's called a differential. So they look at how much money you would have made. Daryl, you can say hi to everyone. My assistant, Daryl.
She's smart.
Or you can, so when you have that locked in, you have to pay that interest differential. So it's a calculation that the bank does. So I can't necessarily do it off the top of my head, but I'm just saying it's usually substantially more than the 3 months interest. So it's whichever is higher when you're locked in. Whereas when you're a variable open mortgage on a 5-year term, then you just pay 3 months penalty of interest. So it's an important thing to know.
Yeah. Every bank, from my understanding, is every bank calculates it slightly differently. So you don't really know, but, you know, for example, you know, she's got a 1.98, but today, you know, they're at 1.5. You know, that's money that the bank is going to be losing over the next 4 years. They had you locked in for 1.98. Now, when they go and reinvest those funds, you know, now they're only able to get 1.5. So they're losing money and they're going to charge for that. I've heard some crazy numbers. I've got a story that I always share about my friend that signed a 5-year fixed and then sold his property, didn't know, and then the bank called him up and said, "You owe us $25,000." It's an extreme example, but it does happen. And so the longer the term, the more money it's going to be. I would assume at least $10,000. So I like to leverage that a lot. I like to leverage that. I like to shine that light on that issue that she doesn't really know that she has. Because normally I'll say, before we move forward with anything, I want you to call your bank and I want you to find out what this is going to be. If we were to move forward with a traditional purchase. And then I always say, worst case scenario, we can always look at seller financing. That would be a kind of a workaround to make sure you save that money. But call the bank first before you move further. When she calls the bank and finds out she has a problem, now suddenly her options are limited. She didn't realize she had limited options, but sometimes you just kind of have to put it that way. And that's not being manipulative. It is in a way, but at the same time, you are helping, right? Yeah. If you were to buy that, if she was to put it on the market, there is a possibility she might not know that. Yeah. And that, that 45,000, 44,000 that she really wanted is actually going to be 24,000 or 30,000. So,
just a quick question. Would you say that your purpose in going there and speaking with the seller is to kind of shine a light on all the costs that would potentially occur if they were to consider selling? That's essentially what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird balance. I mean, you are using sales tactics in a way. You're there because you want to make money and you want to buy a property, but at the same time, you're not trying to be too manipulative. You're trying to find out everything that they need, find out all their options that are available, and see if you can make a deal that's win-win for both of you. And the only way you can do that is you got to find out what things do they need solved. Sometimes they don't really give it up all that easy, so you kind of have to shine the light on it to get that information.
Okay. And oftentimes they haven't thought of those things, right? So you're just trying to educate them on what happens when you sell in the middle of a mortgage. And if these are new Canadians, this might be their first mortgage. Yeah. And when you're signing papers at the lawyer's office, that's a lot of information to intake, right? Yeah. And a new process. So, you're just helping them understand what the cost of buying and selling is, essentially.
Okay.
So, the seller does have some options right now. If they needed to leave, let's focus on I need to leave because this isn't safe. My kids can't play outside. They could put it on the market and they could sell it for $210,000 and pay a realtor $10,000. Yeah. And realtor fees, and they'd still have
86.
They'd still have $14,000 left over.
Okay.
Right. Well, but I didn't factor in the mortgage cancellation, which could mean they walk away with nothing. But they still kind of have options. It's not as if the value of their home is equal to what they owe. In those situations, they've limited options other than working with you or renting it.
Yeah.
She has the ability to rent potentially. She could rent it.
Yeah. Is that something you guys would consider as an additional service? Because that's something I could provide. I already do it for a few other people. Is that something that you would consider, or not really? Just kind of, it takes up too much bandwidth, would you say?
Are there RECA rules? RECA? I don't know. You muted.
Unmute myself. There's a couple things. First of all, it's going to be a negative cash flowing from day one. So can she even afford to pay you to property manage it? Because it's going to cost her a couple $100 each month. Mm-hmm. And maybe she decides to do that just so she can get out. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a solution for her. But technically, when you're managing other people's properties, you are supposed to be licensed, right? Yeah. So, if you're collecting the money and you're doing the ads and all those kinds of things, even if you're not collecting the ads, it's a bit of a gray area. So it's good until it's not.
I'm going down that road. I'm registered with RECA right now. It's a process.
Yeah, no, for sure it is. And the nice thing is, once you are licensed, you get access to the back end of the realtor system, so you can pull your own comps like me.
Nice. Yeah, I was thinking about it. Yeah, that's awesome.
See, I mean, you got a good understanding now of the different motivations this person might have, not just a matter of kind of, like I said, shining the light on it, having discussion and seeing if what you can make of it to kind of make it win-win.
Yeah.
I mean, you can also ask her, what does she want? Like, what do you really, really want? And see if you can kind of put everything together in a nice little neat package that solves all of her problems, gives her what she wants, and you can make it beneficial for yourself.
Now I'm thinking, do I even want to take on this property now? You got to think about that. Now that's a whole different issue now. Okay.
But you know what? At the beginning of the call, you said that you look for reasons to not do the deal.
Yeah. Generally with the person over the phone, but now you've kind of painted a pretty clear picture of
Well, and this is all part of the learning process, right?
Yeah.
So now you're going to adjust your script maybe slightly differently over the phone, and then when you go in person, you're going to be, a little more educating people, and then you'll know for sure whether you have a deal on your hands or not. So
awesome.
This is all a learning process. So you're doing fantastic.
Question, when it comes to the actual, okay, so let's say we do find someone that has a deal and moving beyond, okay, so we've had the initial conversations, we know that they want to move forward. At what point does a contract come into play? Are you the one bringing the contract to is that?
So as soon as you guys have a verbal agreement, you should be putting pen to paper.
Okay.
And you should be writing out that contract and getting them to sign it. So if you want to have conditions, you can. So you're just using your standard purchase and sale agreement with the financing schedule. Those are the only pieces of paper that you need initially. And, I just use the standard one that all the realtors use because that's what people and lawyers are used to, right?
Yeah.
And so you find that in your deal ready documents. It's all there. Barry and Donna have all of that for you, and samples on how to fill it in. So you just fill it in, put your, conditions subject to inspection. Obviously, if you're doing seller financing, it's not subject to financing because they're providing the financing.
Right.
And then you go through the usual things of doing your due diligence so you can remove your conditions. Typically, you need at least 30 days to close. If you're going to have 2 weeks of conditions, you need at least another 2 weeks. Typically, the lawyer's offices take at least 2 weeks to kind of do this specialized agreement. And the lawyer's office will actually draft the agreement for sale document. And so then you would just go to the lawyer as you normally would. You're just signing a different document.
Okay.
Okay. And so then it's just like a typical closing in a way. There's a statement of adjustments. You're going to go get your keys, and you're going to, take over the payments of the property. So
at least 30 days, this entire process, eh? Okay.
Yeah, typically. Now, the exception to that is if you are truly doing a cash deal, so you're purchasing something with cash, then it can be as little as 7 days. Just depends on how quickly your lawyer can get the paperwork done.
Now, in terms of, so on a property, tying up a property with cash, right? Is it that you just, you want to, because there's only so many cash deals you can do reasonably. So let's say you tie up the property with cash, then you're in a situation where do you just borrow against it? And that's how you kind of keep that going. Is that the idea there?
Well, essentially, if you're paying in cash very quickly to close it, it's typically because you're going to renovate it, to refinance it.
Right.
It's not because you're buying a house that needs no renovation with cash.
Right.
So, you'll do your renovations and then you'll go get your bank financing and hopefully most of your renovation money you'll get back, right?
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
You were, I got to call you out on something. You were awfully quick to quit from this deal altogether. I mean, there's still one last option that you can do.
No, it's not a matter of quitting from the deal, man. I'm looking through the other ones and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what makes the most sense, right? And I like the people; they seem very nice. I know I can rent the property, and I know I probably could even rent it over $1,300. But it's like, do I want to take on that for $50, $20 a month, or $30? So okay, and even the idea of finishing the basement, though, right? That's a great thought, but is it worth it? Right. That's another part of it.
You got to
too,
run the
right?
numbers. It could be just like a quick thing where you can just add the suite. It increases the value. You sell it, right? Or maybe it adds value. You refinance. You pull out a lot of your investment out if you wanted to keep it. There's flip opportunities. You can get that on a 6-month agreement for sale or 12-month, and then add a secondary suite, right? And take advantage of that cheap financing, add a secondary suite, right? One other option is like,
you said there was something. You said there was something else. What did I miss?
Oh, well, if you don't want to do it, do you know any other investors who might like an agreement for sale for 4 or 9 years in Edmonton? I'm pretty sure, actually, to be honest, right now, my dog's barking like crazy. My dog wants the deal. Anyone who's watching now, there's a bunch of people watching right now. If you are looking for agreement for sales, at least maybe say 4 or 9 years in Macaulay and Edmonton, post in the comments that you're looking for deals, and then Matthew will reach out to you because he might have something. Now, we're not selling, we're not trading in real estate before we have contracts, whatever. I'm just saying, if you have, just like as a wholesaler, if you have a group of, investors that are always saying, hey, find me deals, I'm looking for deals, you can also build up a list of people who are looking for agreement for sales as well. So it may not be something for you, but if you have a good network of people that there is always the possibility of assigning that deal.
Sure. Very true.
I wouldn't throw it away so quickly. I mean, if you can get that under contract, there is always the possibility of selling your interest in it.
Cool.
And there is no shortage of people looking for agreement for sales.
Like what's reasonable for a contract? Like, well, I guess it would depend on the price of the property and how pretty much how cheap you get it, right? Okay, gotcha.
It's a tough one. It's not like, are you asking about what's reasonable for a fee?
Yeah.
It's not like a typical wholesale where like you can judge it by how much instant equity they're getting or how good of a deal it is. You would normally factor your assignment fee in based on how good the spread was.
Right.
In this scenario where it's a negative cash flow or a break-even cash flow, and maybe you get it for $10,000 on a market value, but you got it for 9 years. I mean, what you're looking at is the fact that how much money are you going to make off of principal pay down and possible appreciation? How much is this deal going to profit over 9 years or 4 years? And then you can kind of look at that and then choose your assignment fee based on that, which is a little difficult. And everyone's going to think differently on what it's worth. I mean, Andrea, how do you justify your assignment costs for an agreement for sale?
Yeah, it's just a combination of factors like how good the deal is, how many years you have on the agreement for sale, does it cash flow well or not? So there's no like magic number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Start low and work my way up as I build credibility. Eh? That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Build that network. Become known as that guy that gets deals, and I'm sure you'll have a great network of people that are looking for it. And it's funny, I asked everyone who's watching who's looking for agreement for sale deals, and literally no comments whatsoever. It's dead. It's been silent ever since. So you know what? To be honest, sorry I even brought it up. But I'll tell you from my experience, I know there's a lot of people, and from time to time I'll put a post up in these groups, and I'll let people know that I got deals coming up, and just lots of people looking for seller financing deals, lots of people looking for creative ways to get into real estate with little to no money down, right? Financing. So I mean, I would still pursue it. I would definitely still pursue it, even if you decide that maybe it's not the best for you. Still pursue it. It's great practice.
Okay.
If you can get it under contract, the only thing I would say as a caveat to that is, if you don't feel confident that you're going to be able to find a buyer, and you don't feel confident that you're actually going to close it, don't tie it up for 2 weeks. I mean, the woman's, you getting her hopes up. She thinks she's moving, and then you just pull the rug and say, "Yeah, I changed my mind."
Okay. Gotcha.
So just be honorable, be a good person. If you really want to help, then help. And sometimes that might mean not tying it up.
Work in progress. Yeah, no worries, man. It's all good. All good. That's
great.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate the feedback. It was great. I had a few roadblocks there, and you guys sort of like helped me okay. So nice. Thank you.
Did you have any other questions, before we, it's 6:00. My God.
Yeah.
Before we kind of wind things down
Well, I have a few more deals here. Let's talk about those. Why won't you? Let's talk about these other 6 I got going here.
Save them. Talk to Donna, and then maybe we can do another session. But yeah, it sounds like you've got something there. You got some things to focus on. Cool. Some motivations, some problems to solve, and just see what you can do with it.
Awesome.
And I don't see any questions. So yeah, Andrew, do you have anything you'd like to say before we end?
No, just good job and keep it going.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, way to do it.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Have a great night, guys.
Yeah. Take care. Later.